Greetings! In today's video, I will be trying out a new watercolor paper by Arrtx. I've tried a much smaller version of this product before, but it's my first time working with a size that's closer to the size I like to use for my drawings and my paintings. This paper is 100% cotton. It is said to be highly absorbent, though that's not really a feature that I take notice of with my watercolor paper. They say it is good for color lifting. That's also something that I don't really do while painting, so I'm not in a position to really give an opinion on that aspect, but it is also hot press paper. And now that's something that's a bit more relevant for my personal usage of watercolor paper. When it comes to watercolor paper, you have two main types of texture. You have cold press, which is the one with a texture, and you have hot press, which is the one that is smooth. The easier one to use is the cold press with the texture. Hot press is a bit harder to use. It has one very big flaw for me. I will come back to this a bit later, but yeah, so I wanted to try this sketchbook in hot press paper for the challenge of it and also to see how it would compare to my previous experiences with this type of paper. Now, this whole sketchbook range from Arrtx is very pretty. I really like how they designed the books. Most of the cover is this really lovely patterned paper, and then the spine, the back, and a slim part of the side of the cover are bound with this really lovely fancy paper that's just a little bit shimmery. It reminds me a bit of Chiyogami paper or washi paper, you know, the Japanese paper where the fiber is really present. That's kind of the feeling I get from this paper. All the text is in gold foil embossing, which is also very classy. And then inside, the book is not bound in the usual way. The whole stack of paper is attached by the last sheet to the back cover, so it can lay really flat. You don't have to fight with the binding to keep this sketchbook flat, at least not in the usual way. The pages in this book are perforated, but not all on the same side. So with the way the sketchbook is bound, every signature is one sheet folded in half, and then all of these sheets folded in half are bound together, and that creates the whole of the sketchbook. Now, the whole thing has 24 sheets, and every pair of sheets in the book is technically one larger sheet folded in half. I hope that makes sense. Now, all the sheets are perforated, but as they are folded, I'm guessing they were perforated before they were bound together, so the perforations are on one side of the paper, so they end up not all being on the same side of the book. So this paper can be used on both sides, but the perforations seem to have been made from one side of the paper, so they're not all on the same side. The perforations are mirrored in a way. I hope my explanation in the video will make sense of what I'm saying, but the sketchbook seems nicely bound. The pages have a really nice thickness for watercolor paint. They feel quite sturdy. To try this sketchbook, it's pretty straightforward, so I will paint something in it. And I did the work in the usual way I paint, so I can compare. I usually start by taping off a border because I like the really nice clean edges. Then I sketch my drawing, I ink it with ink that is waterproof, let it fully dry. When it's dry, I can erase my sketch lines, and then it's ready for painting. As I'm testing the paper in this case, I chose a paint that I'm familiar with, and I chose brushes that I'm familiar with, so the only new variable in here is the paper. From experience, hot press paper can be tricky to use for paints. It's a bit like the texture of cold press paper helps the paint travel more evenly and give an even look to your washes. The texture will guide the paint a bit better, while hot press paper being smooth, the paint stays there. It's watercolor, so some brands of watercolor will travel through water, but if you are painting on a dry part of the paper, there's a chance that your flat wash is going to look better on a cold press than it would on hot press. There's another thing with hot press that is always super stressful, but a lot of hot press paper, when you wet them, so when you paint on them, you add your color and immediately the paper look like it's spilling. You know, when the paper gets too worked up, too wet, and it starts ripping off in little bits, like a shirt that's spilling, but now it's the paper, and it will look like that. But if you don't panic, if you let the paint dry and the paper dry, that that effect will disappear as the paint dries. So it's just a temporary effect, but it's always very panic inducing because you don't know exactly if what you've just painted will look fine once dry. There's one thing that hot press paper has in its favor is that it's really fun for granulating paints. With the textured paper, with the cold press paper, the way granulation settles is often very predictable. With hot press, it will settle as well, but not in a way that's just as predictable. So you can have some really fun effect if you use granulating paints, water, and hot press paper. Also, hot press is often preferred by illustrators and people who do a lot of line work because of the way the paper doesn't mess up your pens. With cold press, the texture is rough enough that if you use felt tip pens, it will mess up your pens really quickly, and that's really annoying. Hot press being smooth, you basically don't have any issue using any kind of pen on this paper. And finally, one last little note from experience about hot press paper is that most hot press paper, regardless of brand, regardless of, anything, it really doesn't like any kind of masking fluid or masking tape. I've had experiences where the standard masking tape that I use on all my cold press paper and that I can remove without any issue on cold press paper, I take the exact same roll of tape and I put it on hot press paper, and the paper just tears off with the tape, which is always a bit of a bummer, And same with masking fluid. I don't know what particularly in the way the hot press paper is made, but it is much more sensitive to any kind of adhesive thing. So masking tape, masking fluid, you gotta be extra careful when you remove it. And usually I would say try it on a piece of scrap paper first, just to make sure it's all good. You don't want to paint your whole picture and then when you're completely done and all that's left to do is to remove the masking fluid or the tape, and that ruins your picture. Not a great feeling. As you can see, I put tape on this paper, so I am going to try it. Put it to the tests that I put any paper through. So I'm a bit nervous about that part, but we'll see more of that when I'm done painting. Now, as I painted, I didn't notice anything particularly noteworthy, which is good. Usually when you notice stuff while painting, it's issues. I painted to my heart's content and didn't really trip into anything. That's a really good thing. With this particular paper, I didn't really notice that pilling effect I was telling you about that happens often with hot press paper. I kind of felt like I was painting on cold press, to be honest, without the texture. Like it was the exact same behavior. I continued painting the way I usually do, and it just went along perfectly. I was able to layer paints without any issue, without any unsightly lifting, without any weird texture happening as the paint dries. Like nothing weird happened. It was just a great experience from start to finish for the painting part. You can get a sharp line to the edge of your painted shape if you go on dry paper. If you wet the paper and then you paint on that, you can get that softened edge, but there's no unexpected feathering. There's no weird, uncharacteristic behavior that happens throughout this whole painting. And also, a note, you saw that I inked my drawing. I used the Pentel brush pen for inking because it is waterproof and it is a brush pen. I really like using this kind of tool, but I've had various experiences with it in the past. I've used it for many years, and on some papers, it's a bit like the ink really stays on top of the paper, and then when you erase your sketch, the eraser picks up a bit of the ink as well, or it will rub off on the opposite page. Like there's a couple of weird things that have happened to me regarding this particular ink, but in the case of this paper, I didn't notice anything that would annoy me. I was able to erase my sketch lines, and I feel like the ink work kept its integrity. It stays nice and dark is basically what I want to say. And then when I did the gouache accents on top of everything, that also went perfectly well. No weird reaction, no weird re-wetting of something underneath, just the exact behavior I expect from paint on watercolor paper. So far, so good. I mean, so good. Everything went so smoothly and so excellently. There is one big test left to do though, and it's the one I'm the most nervous about, and it's removing the tape. Now, I know what I'm getting into. I know that hot press paper is finicky, so I make sure I'm calm, take a deep breath. I'm sitting, well, I hold my sketchbook firmly with my left hand, and with my right hand, my main hand, I set out to peel off the tape. Now, there's a couple of things you can do to make removing masking tape nicer on the paper, and it's to pull the tape along the level of the paper. It's a bit hard to explain with words, but basically you want to pull the tape away from the painting while keeping it level with the painting. I hope that makes sense. And then you also want to remove the tape, making sure sure you create a sort of 90-degree angle in relation to the tape that's still stuck on the painting. I don't know if these two little tricks really make a huge difference, but that's what I've been told, that's what I've always done, and it usually works for me. And in the case of this paper here, it worked out well. I'm so relieved. You can see two of the tapes that some very small, minute shreds of paper tore off the sheet, but it's not very noticeable on the painting itself. Mind you, I didn't keep the tape on the painting very long, under 24 hours, so perhaps that's something to keep in mind as well. If you want to use tape on this paper, perhaps it's best to not leave the tape on there too long. But yeah, I took my time, applied all the tricks I knew, and was able to remove the tape very smoothly. I know a lot of people will possibly suggest that you can use a hairdryer to warm up the tape to make peeling it easier. I don't really like using this. I'm always worried that some of the glue will stay on the paper, and I don't really like this idea. Also, my cats are terrified of the hairdryer, so if I can skip it, I'll skip it. This paper passes the hardest test for hot press paper, and I'm impressed. Now, there is one thing that I had some issues with, and it's the perforations. They're a bit difficult to really follow along and to tear off the paper cleanly. I tried a few methods, a few angles. I feel like what worked out the best for me once I was started a little bit was to pull the paper away from the spine. Like you want to stay on the same level as the sheet. You don't want to tear it upwards, you don't want to tear it downwards, you want to stay on the same level and tear it away from the paper. I hope that makes sense. Again, another thing that is very difficult to put into words and much easier to show. And that's it. Overall, this is a very good paper. I'm super psyched about using all the pages in it to paint more illustrations. It is lovely. It is fun to ink on. It is fun to paint on. It is very affordable in my opinion, and it delivers a really good performance. I'm super happy. I'm also very thankful to Arrtx for sending me this sketchbook to try out. I know I've only painted one thing in it, but I plan on painting more, and if there's ever something that is particularly noteworthy, I will make sure to update you guys on it. And also thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this was helpful. If you have any question or any opinion you want to share, you can do so in the comments below. I really enjoy reading your takes in the comments. And again, thank you for watching. Thank you Arrtx for this beautiful sketchbook. I'll have all the links in the description if you want to check it out, and see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.